Hello, and welcome to the Orientation to Selection Committee roles and responsibilities for the Planning, Infrastructure, and Economic Revitalization Program, also known as PIER. First, let's review the overall cycle for the PIER program. We can see it began with the Department of Housing and Urban Development approving Oregon's action plan. Then, money is allocated to the counties. We are currently in the allocation to counties phase. Then awards will be made to subrecipients by OHCS, and then those projects will be implemented by subrecipients and subgrantees. After this module, you should understand the basic PIER allocation framework, the components of a selection committee, the responsibilities of a selection committee, and OHCS's expectations of selection committees. Each impacted county received an allocation under the PIER program, as shown in this chart. These allocations may also be found in Oregon's action plan for your reference. A few notes regarding the selection committees. For each county, a regional body known as the selection committee will be established with voting representatives. At a minimum of the municipal and county governments, the Economic Development District, or identified substitute, and the long-term recovery group to select projects for OHCS approval. Some committees are required to include specific voting members. We can see those members on the second point of the slide, and that this pertains to Douglas, Klamath, Lincoln, and Marion-Linn counties. Selection committees must be formed and members must have completed the OHCS Selection Committee orientation by December 31st, 2024. A few notes about committee members. Members may vote to add more voting members from government, special districts, other organizations, and/or ex officio non-voting members. No entity may have more than one voting member on the selection committee, and selection committees must have an odd number of voting members. Now let's review selection committee duties. Selection committees must select a point of contact for communication with OHCS, maintain a list of selection committee members and their affiliations, engage in robust, equitable outreach and engagement about the PIER program, establish procedures and evaluation criteria for selecting projects, and adopting the state citizen participation plan or creating one. Selection committees must also adopt the state or local government's language access plan or create their own. It's important to note while the selection committee roles and responsibilities give local flexibility and control over many key aspects of selection, there are key aspects such as implementation and program rules that cannot be changed by the selection committee. This includes items like program duration, eligibility under CDBG-DR rules, as well as other required components of the PIER program. All selection committees are expected to conduct a robust outreach and engagement process. This includes advertising the availability of CDBG-DR funds, informing the public and possible applicants of their project selection methodology. It is also important to note that selection committees must document their efforts before and after CDBG-DR funds were allocated to the county. Citizen participation plans will outline to hold meetings that are open to the public when project selections are made. They will post or publish notices about any public meeting times and locations. They will accept and record and answer public comments, that public meetings must be accessible, and that minutes of official meetings, including essential decisions, must be provided to OHCS. These types of decisions could include adding voting members, establishing the selection process for projects, or making project selections. You may refer to the ReOregon or Citizen Participation Plan for full requirements. Now looking at language access plan requirements. Selection committees must use their adopted language access plan to determine which language materials need to be translated. Committees can adopt the local government's CDBG-DR language access plan or OHCS's. All required public documents must follow the language access plan. The project selection process may be conducted as selection rounds or as rolling applications. They may be one that is competitive or first come, first served. Projects may be scored as either pass, fail, or by cumulative scoring. Selection committees must create timelines for when project proposals are due, when they will be reviewed, and timelines for their public meetings. The selection committees must document and share the selection process with OHCS. Now looking at final project selection requirements. Each project should be evaluated to determine the effectiveness of the proposal within the project location and protecting the public from risks identified in the mitigation needs assessment. They must consider members of protected classes, vulnerable populations, and historically underserved communities in the determination. They must understand how the project or program supports historically underserved communities, and they must verify that the project either has a tie back to the disaster or mitigates the impact of future disasters. Other final project selection requirements to be aware of are that OHCS must be present when proposed projects are selected. Meetings must be public with public notice by general local government entities that are participating. Quorum of more than 50% of voting members is required. Voting may be written or by proxy if a voting member cannot be present. 2/3 of voting members must approve a project to move forward. And if there's a conflict of interest, the voting members must recuse themselves from both deliberation on the project application as well as on the voting on that project application. Moving on to conflict of interest. Procedures are applicable to any person who is an employee, agent, consultant, officer, elected appointed official of OHCS, a selection committee, or of a subrecipient subgrantee applying for or receiving CDBG-DR funds, if any of the following conditions apply to that person's roles or duties. Those conditions being exercising functions or responsibilities regarding CDBG-DR funded assisted activities, and are able to participate in decision-making or gain inside information on those activities. It is important to note a conflict of interest occurs when a covered person may obtain financial interest or benefit from a CDBG-DR funded activity, contract, subcontract, agreements, or may receive proceeds for themselves or those with whom they have family business ties during the 10-year or for 1 year thereafter. If there's a conflict of interest, the selection committee member must recuse themselves from both deliberation on the project application as well as the voting on that project application. Diving into a little more regarding award amounts, selection committees may not be able to anticipate all activity delivery and administration costs. To ensure that funding is available for those costs, no more than 70% of county PIER allocations may be awarded by committee. Now looking at committee member conduct. Committee members must comply with local, state, federal laws, rules, and regulations. Consider what is in the best interest of the entire community. Provide equitable and politically neutral consideration of all proposed projects. Foster positive, respectful, courteous, professional, and productive discussions and deliberations, and promptly disclose any conflicts of interest. Now for a quick review of responsibilities by selection committees and OHCS. It is imperative that selection committees engage in equitable outreach and engagement about the local PIER program, determine local needs and establish priority activities, establishes and conducts committee meetings, evaluates, scores, and prioritizes proposed projects, and establishes and recommends project award amounts. It is imperative that OHCS responsibilities consist of verifying eligibility and compliance for selected projects, approves projects and award amounts, determines project administrator, subrecipient, or subgrantee status for project management, and enters into agreements with PA subrecipients or subrecipients. Once the selection committee selects a project, the project lead will meet with OHCS to review their project prior to submitting their final project description form to OHCS. Meeting topics will include verifying the project scope, discussing meeting national objective criteria, reviewing budget materials, thoroughly reviewing application expectations, and providing time for Q&A. This chart provides an example structure of project agreements for the PIER program. We can see that HUD is the federal entity that oversees the CDBG-DR program and has designated OHCS as the grantee. OHCS then can work to create agreements with PA subrecipients, with subgrantees, or subrecipients. Now for a refresher with a quick knowledge check. Which one of these is not a responsibility of the selection committee? A, determine local needs and priorities. B, selecting eligible projects. Or C, enter into agreements with selected projects. And we can see the correct answer is C. Entering into agreements with selected projects is a responsibility of OHCS and not the selection committees. Thanks for your time and attention today. If you have any questions after this presentation, please reach out to the contact information provided on this slide. Lastly, you may review additional resources related to OHCS's general programs or PIER programs at the following noted links. Thank you and have a great day.